Top 10 smallest cars that packed the biggest punch in the 60s. Some swear the 1966 Nova SS 327 was the king of small car muscle. But is it really the one that hit the hardest? This list exists because of you. In our last video, so many of you shared your picks for the smallest cars that shocked the streets in the 60s, we had to put them to the test. We took your suggestions, checked the numbers, and now we're counting down the top smallest cars that packed the biggest punch in the 60s. These weren't oversized cruisers or flashy showboats. These were compact, lightweight fighters that could take down bigger, heavier rivals and leave them gasping at the lights. From factory-built drag strip assassins to aluminum block sleepers and small block screamers, we'll break down horsepower, torque, curb weight, and real-world performance. Some of these you'll expect. Others will make you wonder how they stayed under the radar for so long. If you think small meant slow, think again. Which one would you crown the ultimate small car street brawler? Cast your vote in the comments, because this list started with you, and we can't wait to see your winner. 1969 Dodge Dart GTS 440. In 1969, Dodge took a small, unassuming A-body and turned it into the street's version of a coiled rattlesnake, silent until it struck. The Dodge Dart GTS with the 440 Magnum wasn't just fast, it was outrageous. From the curb, it looked like a sensible two-door coupe, the kind your neighbor might use for a grocery run, the mechanical equivalent of a man in a suit hiding a heavyweight title belt. But under that calm exterior lurked a massive 440 cubic inch big block V8 factory, rated at 375 horsepower and a crushing 480 pound-feet of torque. That power, combined with a curb weight just over 3,300 pounds, made for acceleration that hit like a sucker punch. In the right hands, the GTS 440 could blast from 0 to 60 miles per hour in the low 5-second range and run the quarter mile in under 13 seconds speed, on par with the loudest, most feared muscle cars of its day. And because it wore no wild stripes or oversized scoops, it was a wolf in church clothes, the perfect sleeper. Only about 640 were ever built, adding a rare, almost mythical status. On the street, it stalked quietly, waiting for the green light before delivering a knockout blow that left rivals staring at its taillights. It's no wonder so many of you called this car out in our community poll. It was the street brawler you never saw coming. (1964) Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt 427. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt 427 was no ordinary Fairlane. It was a purpose-built drag strip weapon disguised as a mid-size sedan. Created specifically to dominate NHRA superstock competition, the Thunderbolt took the standard Fairlane body and stripped it down for one purpose: speed. Weight was slashed using fiberglass body panels, a teardrop fiberglass hood, and plexiglass side and rear windows. Even the sound-deadening material was tossed to save precious pounds. Under the hood sat the legendary 427 cubic inch side Oiler V8 factory, rated at 425 horsepower, but capable of much more in race trim. Backed by a close ratio, 4-speed or a stout automatic, the Thunderbolt could rip through the quarter mile in the low 11-second range right off the showroom floor performance that instantly made it the terror of the drag strip. Only 100 examples were built, all for competition use, and every one of them was essentially hand-assembled with a singular mission: win races. At just over 3,200 pounds, the power-to-weight ratio was outrageous for its time, giving the Thunderbolt the ability to humiliate even the most feared muscle cars of the era. On the street, it was barely civil, rough, idle, stiff clutch, minimal comforts. But that was never the point. The Thunderbolt was a factory hot rod in its purest form, and its rarity and racing pedigree have made it one of the most collectible Fords ever built. 1967 Mercury Cougar GTE 7-liter 428. The 1967 Mercury Cougar GTE was the kind of car that made you question whether Mercury's engineers were building a luxury cruiser or secretly plotting a street ambush. On the surface, it was polished and refined, a gentleman's muscle car with a long wheelbase, hidden headlights, and elegant chrome trim. It looked more at home parked outside a country club than lining up at a drag strip. But then you lifted the hood, and the truth roared to life: a 428 cubic inch V8 with 345 horsepower and a mountain of torque funneled through Ford's bulletproof C6 automatic. Weighing in at around 3,850 pounds, it was like watching a well-dressed prizefighter in a tailored suit, calm and composed, yet capable of knocking you flat in the first round. It almost felt like the engineers went overboard on purpose, hiding big block brutality inside a package that whispered rather than shouted. With only a few hundred built, the GTE was rare enough to fly under the radar, which made it even deadlier as a sleeper. On the street, it could roll up looking like a refined cruiser, then, in the next heartbeat, launch forward with the force of a runaway freight train. That was the beauty of the GTE. It blended sophistication and savagery in a way few cars dared. You could sip coffee in comfort while knowing you had the firepower to humble GTOS Roadrunners and even big Chevys. In the world of 60s and 70s muscle, the Cougar GTE proved that the quietest predator often strikes the hardest. 1964 Chevrolet Malibu SS 327 375 horsepower. The 1964 Chevrolet Malibu SS 327 375 horsepower was like a schoolteacher who, after the bell rang, stepped into a boxing ring and knocked out the heavyweight champ. On the outside, it was calm and well-mannered, straight body lines, polite chrome accents, and just enough SS badging to hint at pride without bragging. But the moment you turned the key, it shed its polite manners. Under the hood lurked the L76 small block 327, a high-compression masterpiece lifted straight from the Corvette playbook and tuned to a savage 375 horsepower. Paired with a close-ratio 4-speed manual, it turned the modest A-body Malibu into a precision street weapon. At just over 3,000 pounds, every stab of the throttle felt like setting off a controlled explosion, one that launched you down the quarter mile before the other guy even realized what happened. It wasn't just quick, it was unsettlingly quick for something that could pass for your neighbor's Sunday cruiser. Some swore Chevy's engineers intentionally kept its appearance understated, a kind of mechanical poker face meant to lure in overconfident rivals. Once the light turned green, the Malibu SS played its winning hand in an instant. In an era obsessed with big block bragging rights, this small block assassin proved that you didn't need size to dominate, you just needed the right kind of speed, hidden in plain sight. (1965) Oldsmobile 44-2400. The 1965 Oldsmobile 44-2400 was like the first punch in a fight that no one expected Oldsmobile to win. Up until then, the brand was better known for comfort and refinement, not for lining up at the drag strip. But with the launch of the 442, standing for 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed manual and dual exhaust, Olds sent a clear message: they were done sitting on the sidelines. Under the hood was a 400 cubic inch V8, delivering a stout 345 horsepower and a massive 440 pound-feet of torque. That torque made all the difference off the line. The mid-size Olds hooked hard, planted its rear tires, and launched forward like it had something to prove. And it did. The 442 wasn't a stripped-down bruiser. It carried Oldsmobile's trademark build quality, interior comfort, and clean styling. Yet when the light turned green, it could embarrass plenty of so-called street kings. Weighing in at just over 3,500 pounds, it wasn't the lightest in its class, but its balanced gearing and traction made it a serious contender in the muscle car wars. More importantly, it gave Oldsmobile an identity in the performance market, a reputation they'd build on for the rest of the decade. (1968) Plymouth Barracuda Formula S340. Some cars didn't just show up to the muscle car fight, they danced around the ring and landed the knockout before the other guy knew what happened. The 1968 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S340 was exactly that kind of fighter. Built on the lightweight A-body platform, tipping the scales at just a hair over 3,000 pounds, it wore sleek coupe or fastback lines that looked quick, even standing still. But under that sheet, metal lurked Mopar's new 340 cubic inch small block V8, officially rated at 275 horsepower. Though those who raced one knew that number was shy of the truth. With free breathing heads, a high lift cam, and a love for high RPMs, the 340 turned the Barracuda into a giant killer. Backed by a 4-speed manual and upgraded Formula S suspension and brakes, it could rocket through the quarter-mile in under 14 seconds, while still carving corners with poise. That combination of agility and straight-line punch made it dangerous in the hands of a skilled driver, especially against heavier, more powerful big-block competitors. It wasn't just another muscle car, it was a precision tool disguised as a stylish compact, the kind that caught overconfident rivals completely off guard. And in the world of late 60s street racing, that was half the fun. 1964 Dodge Polara 500 426 Max Wedge. Some cars didn't just blur the line between street and strip, they erased it completely. The 1964 Dodge Polara 500 426. Max Wedge was one of those machines. At first glance, it looked like a well-dressed full-size Dodge, the kind you might see parked outside a mid-60s suburban driveway. But lurking under the hood was Mopar's 426 cubic inch Max Wedge V8, a purpose-built drag racing engine rated between 415 and 425 horsepower. With massive ports, high compression internals, and a dual quad intake, it was built for one thing: winning quarter-mile battles. Even though the Polara rode on a wide and roomy B-body platform, its race-focused setup kept weight in check, giving it explosive launches that could shock much smaller cars. In the right hands, with aggressive gearing and slicks, it was a consistent 12-second car in NHRA Superstock competition. The 500 trim added a touch of class with bucket seats, a console shifter, and chrome accents. But make no mistake, this was a factory street legal dragster in disguise. Limited production and a buyer base made up mostly of serious racers means surviving examples are rare today. The Polara 500 Max Wedge proved that size didn't have to slow you down, especially when your big block was one of the most feared in the game. 1967 Pontiac Firebird 400 HG. Every now and then, a car comes along that proves you don't need the biggest badge in the lineup to throw a knockout punch. The 1967 Pontiac Firebird 400 high output was exactly that, a leaner, more athletic prizefighter compared to the heavyweight GTO, yet perfectly capable of going toe-to-toe in the quarter-mile. Built on the brand-new F-body platform, it was like strapping a rocket to a gymnast sharp agile and packing Pontiac's 400 cubic inch V8. In high output form, that meant 335 horsepower, and a thundering 430 pound-feet of torque, ready to pounce at any green light. Pontiac's engineers didn't just give it power, they tuned it like a race instrument. Free-flowing exhaust manifolds let it exhale with a roar. A hotter cam kept the punches coming higher in the rev range, and higher compression made every throttle stab feel like lighting a fuse. Paired with a 4-speed manual, it could tear through the quarter-mile in the low 14s, leaving bigger, more expensive cars staring at its tail lamps. The Firebird 400HO wore its muscle like a tailored suit, functional twin-hood scoops, subtle badging, and a wide track stance that whispered confidence instead of shouting. It was Pontiac's way of proving that style and savagery could share the same body. In the street wars of the late 60s, the Firebird 400HO wasn't just an underdog, it was the quiet fighter that walked away with the trophy. (1963) Ford Falcon Sprint 260 Convertible. Some cars feel less like machines and more like old friends, the kind you remember for the way they made you feel, not just how fast they went. The 1963 Ford Falcon Sprint 260 Convertible was one of those cars. Light on its feet and easy on the eyes, it was Ford's compact charmer that quietly carried the DNA of a revolution. A year before the Mustang would steal the spotlight, the Falcon Sprint was already showing America how fun a small V8 convertible could be. Under the hood sat the 260 cubic inch V8 rated at 164 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, paired with a 4-speed manual that begged to be rode through every gear. With a curb weight of just 2,716 pounds, the Falcon didn't need massive horsepower to deliver thrills. Its lively steering and eager throttle response gave it a raw mechanical honesty that modern cars often lack. Drop the top, let the wind in, and it felt like the road stretched out just for you. While it never pretended to be the fastest at the drag strip, the Sprint could still post a respectable 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 9 seconds, with the quarter-mile arriving in the low 17s. Its clean lines, bucket seats, and sporty touches hinted at something more than a simple commuter. And indeed, it was the platform that would evolve into the first Mustang. For enthusiasts who remember it, the Falcon Sprint wasn't just a prelude to greatness. It was greatness in its own right. (1963) Buick Special 215 Aluminum V8. Some engines don't just power cars, they rewrite the rulebook. The 1963 Buick Special, with its 215 cubic inch all-aluminum V8, was one of those rare breakthroughs. At just 318 pounds, this compact powerhouse weighed nearly half of what most iron block V8s of the era tipped the scales at. The result was a featherweight sleeper with excellent balance, nimble handling, and performance that caught bigger cars off guard. Depending on the version, the 215 produced anywhere from 155 to 200 horsepower with torque figures strong enough to make this small Buick feel much larger than it was. In a world where bigger is better ruled, Detroit Buick's engineers went the opposite way, shedding weight, embracing advanced metallurgy, and creating an engine so ahead of its time that British automaker Rover bought the rights and used the design for decades in sports cars and SUVs. On the street, the Buick Special 215 didn't scream for attention. Its styling was clean and understated the kind of car you might park next to at the grocery store without a second glance until it left you behind at the light. With its combination of light curb weight, smooth power delivery, and groundbreaking engineering, it was a true underdog legend. So which of these underdog legends would you put in your garage? That wraps up our countdown of the top 10 smallest cars that packed the biggest punch in the 60s. These weren't just cars, they were proof that muscle could come in compact form, turning every stoplight into a showdown and every back road into a playground. Some became instant legends, others stayed hidden gems known only to the sharpest street racers. But together, they rewrote the rulebook on what a small car could do. So here's the real question. If you could fire up just one of these lightweight warriors today, which one would you choose? Let us know in the comments. Hit that like button if you love these blasts from the past, and make sure you're subscribed for more stories that bring muscle car history roaring back to life. Because around here, we don't just remember the legends, we keep them alive. Stay tuned, because the next list might just feature your suggestion.